So this is I'm sure actually I know for a fact a number of the members, Patreon members, are very interested in Washington and Lee.
Mhm.
And the one question that has been bantered about was the decision process of going from Washington and Lee to Goucher, and you don't have to get too deep or deep at all or even explain, but we're just curious, like, what was that process like? Was there a reason why you decided to go around? Because I will say, from a fan perspective, I think a lot of people were surprised that you're leaving this you're leaving Washington and Lee, national semifinalist with a great program, and going to Goucher, which historically, right, as you mentioned, wasn't quite up to snuff on the women's side.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I've always told my players family comes first.
Mm-hmm.
And, my wife moved down to Virginia with me when I took over at W&L, and she's got a good job and was promoted in the corporate area of her company. And
Mm-hmm.
they were asking her to be closer to the corporate office. So, it's kind of family comes first.
Yeah.
So, kind of makes it pretty easy when,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's,
Yeah. Well,
um,
okay, I that's good. You know what? I appreciate that, value that tremendously, right? Like, I think that is the best reason to do anything, right? If it's a family thing, then that's good. Can't I do have to start asking you these other questions, though, because now my head's spiraling, right? Like, all right, so I think the timing for Goucher was right, right? Like, I thought I saw the coach would resigned and then, or was moving on, and then so there was a vacancy. I mean, there was that,
yes.
without revealing too much, that was the,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. I think the coach resigned in probably February.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, was it even earlier? Yeah, might have been earlier. I think it was January.
Yeah.
So then they posted, and they did a very quick interview process and hiring process. I
Mm-hmm.
think the whole process took like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Um, so that turned it around pretty fast.
Yeah. Were you? I mean, can I ask this too? Like, was your, when you made the decision with your family and then decide to move? I mean, was there a chance that you wouldn't have been coaching? Was that on the table as well, or were you?
Well, there came to something like, I told my wife I can, in soccer we can always be those multi-hatters who coach a few club teams
Yeah,
here. We do some
yeah,
things
yeah,
there. We do some
yeah.
things there. At the same point, I'm kind of past that age.
Yeah,
And I do have a 6-year-old son who I
yeah,
want to see.
yeah.
Um,
That would be nice, wouldn't
so yeah.
it?
So although there was always, the potential of that,
Hmm.
thankfully we had not a strict timetable as
Yeah.
far as the immediate
Ah, okay.
date
Yeah,
by which
yeah,
we needed to do something.
yeah,
So, you know, there's in the soccer circles, it's funny. There's, wherever you go, you can find jobs and get some money. It's just a matter of, keeping the
yeah,
family on a consistent sort of economic
yeah,
platform, and
yeah,
making sure that we can fulfill our needs as well.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad you weren't. I'm glad you weren't coaching like 7 teams across 3 clubs, U9s to. It's like that would have been you. You would have like bags under your eyes by now. It was like, at least I would. I'm like, I can barely do 3 games on a weekend of refereeing, and I'm hurting. But um, th- when you were hired, knowing, look, I'll just be honest, like, you're one of the top, and on the men's side, top coach in Division 3, and I'd argue soccer, but let's keep it to Division 3. Did did Goucher hire you with a purpose? Like, did they say to you, like, look, if you're the candidate, not knowing the intricacies of their selection, but if you're the candidate, we expect you to build this program to be competitive, blah blah blah. Like, anything like that, or were they just kind of like, hey, you're a great coach, we're going to want you to coach, and sort of this becomes your thing.
No, from what I got from them in the process, like the first call I got was from someone on the committee, um, who just wanted to see if I was actually interested genuinely.
Yeah.
And once we got through that, then I just got a lot of positive,
Hmm.
just sort of words and positive encouragement. And there's no edict given like we want
Hmm.
you to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
But there is a good, just a good excitement. Um,
Hmm.
I think the administration is excited because they know I have a good history and have proven to be able to be pretty successful. So they're hoping for that for the team.
Hmm.
Um, and the other coaches in the department have been so welcoming and so wanting to combine and steal from each other and do all that stuff. And so I
Hmm.
think there's a good energy and a good sort of optimism about it.
Yeah. Well, I will say, if anybody had a chance to watch the Fields of Dreams, it's a diamond of a school. Like the facilities are great. Like I was surprised, having never, until I started doing this, like having never really heard of Goucher, being from New Jersey, to show
Mm-hmm.
up at this school where not my expectations are sort of nothing, right? Like, oh, we'll see what we see. I was surprised the athletic facilities and all the facilities, the new dorms and all that kind of stuff. I mean, what a remarkable place. And it was really surprising to me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like you're going to be playing soccer games on a pasture, so I could see why they would be excited, right? Like, um,
Yeah.
um,
No,
and
it's a
then I did,
beautiful campus.
yeah,
And, it's sort of what I call like a throwback campus where I think the founders of the school got this land in what is now
yeah,
a very urban area.
yeah.
And you go in like a gated
It's
section and you have,
it's an
150
oasis.
acres of beauty
Yeah,
and nature paths and
yeah, yeah,
great things. And then you walk out and you see a downtown. And
yeah,
then you have
yeah,
100 restaurants and
yeah,
100 shops across the
yeah.
street.
And it is very much like that. For you drive in and it is, and you look around. I mean, it is a massive place
Mhm.
land wise, and there's Goucher, and you're surrounded by suburbs and whatever else, right? Like it is, you're in the middle of it. You just don't realize it when you're on campus. I mean,
Right.
that was the crazy thing. And I think you just got a huge donation or
Yeah.
endowment for the
Yeah.
school, which is fantastic.
$55 million
Yeah,
donation,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is the biggest in school history.
Yeah, yeah. I'd appreciate if you could send maybe 10% of that. You know, like just a little bit, 1%. Like, that would work for me. Um, hey, all right. So I gotta ask you because you talked about it a little bit, and I joked about it. Just the whole pairwise thing, and what your thoughts are, because from what I understand, had this been in effect last year, you or this past season, you guys wouldn't have qualified or made the NCAA tournament, which would have been as egregious as they come, right? Like, I mean, you
Right.
just that's absurd. But so I was just wondering your thoughts on it, and um, if you have any thoughts on it. But yeah, just willing.
I have thoughts on it, and I've been talking with a lot of people about it because I'm on a
Yeah.
lot of committees and stuff
Oh
like
yeah.
that. And I'll be honest, the general consensus is we're stunned it's even being considered and being forced upon us.
Yeah.
Because
Really.
think of it in this regards: we had worked on different committees nationally for so many years to get clarity on the selection process. So
Yeah.
now everybody, whether they like it or not, can say they know what you need to do to make
Yeah.
up your schedule to
Yeah.
give yourself a good chance to get into the tournament.
Right.
They will not share the equation with us. They will not share what goes into the pairwise rankings. So we don't have information
Mm-mm.
of how to make our schedules to allow us to succeed.
Mm.
And when you look at the fact that we had removed the away game bonuses from the system years ago because it's just geographically
Yeah.
biased.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like
Oh, totally.
unbelievably biased.
Yeah.
And now they're saying it's back in pairwise. And it begs the question of one, some of us do know statistics very well, and we would love to see the equation and think of the reliability and
Mm-hmm.
validity of it
Mm-hmm.
because we know that stuff.
Yeah.
But they're not willing to share any of that with us. They didn't take a poll of coaches to ask if they wanted it. They simply said they had used it in hockey and hockey was happy with it, so they wanted to move it to soccer. And so, in talking with other coaches about this, because everybody's just miffed and bewildered by it, I mean, letters were sent to the NCAA from all the soccer coaches in NESCAC and the administrators saying they were against it.
Mm-hmm.
The NCAA Championship Soccer Committee themselves sent a letter saying they're against it.
And that had no impact.
And still, like, and I remember, and quite honestly, it was Dan Wagner and I
Mm-hmm.
talking when we were down at IMG at a recruiting event. And he's like, what is, like, how, why is this happening? And I remember I was walking away to another field and it was just like something kicked in my head. And I just texted him. I'm like, I think I figured out what we can't understand. And my hypothesis is they must be paying the NCAA. That company must be trying to get a footing in this area and paying the NCAA.
And they're willing to do it with a sport that is not,
Yeah.
right, like a higher up sport, whatever that,
Yeah.
right,
Well,
like football, basketball, whatever, right?
it's also the biggest sport, has the
Yeah.
most teams.
Yeah.
So what
Oh
a
yeah.
yield that is for
Yeah.
pairwise.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
hockey, I mean, they're like 15% the size of soccer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's not really a big bite to chew
That's
off.
not a sample, right? That's not a
No.
real. Yeah. Yeah.
But when you look at the number of soccer teams at all three divisions and the
Yeah.
magnitude of it, but what we're being told as well is that this is just going to be a D3 thing.
So it's not even applying outside. Like, how is that happen? Okay.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like I asked some of my D1 colleagues, I'm like, have you guys been heard about this thing? And they're like, no, what's that? And I'm like, oh, okay. So it's really interesting how it's just got thrown on us, not described, not vetted. And on the committee meetings that we had, like people were actually bringing up a very interesting point. Our jobs are dependent on us
Yeah.
making our teams be competitive and successful.
Yeah.
And now the NCAA is throwing something in that makes it impossible for any of
Yeah.
us to even
You can't.
determine how to do that well,
Yeah. Yeah.
how to do our jobs. We don't know how to do our jobs right now.
Mm-mm.
And it's shameful. And
Yeah.
and I look at it and it's the exact reason why the NCAA has fallen so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's they are not looking at their constituents and they're not looking at their member organizations and communicating with them well and clarifying
Mm-hmm.
and asking the questions to get to the common goals.
Yeah.
They're just forcing things randomly upon us. Nobody asked for this. Nobody was looking for this.
Yeah.
And they haven't described enough of it for us to even understand what it is anymore.
What is it? Yeah, it's like a black box, right? Like we're gonna shove all this stuff into it, and it's gonna turn out this magical thing. And we don't ask about the black box, but we're gonna get you this magical thing, hoping that you're gonna forget.
But here's
right?
some of the weird oddities of it too that fortunately I've had access to. Is so Messiah last year would have been ranked the number 1 team. No problems.
In the country. Yeah.
Yeah. No problem at all with that.
Yeah.
That's a quality team, quality program. We're having a great year.
Yeah.
But the pairwise system only used 4 of their games from their whole season to come up with that
4
ranking. 4.
Shit.
So what are the disqualifying and qualifying games? Like what gets determined? We don't know. They won't tell us. So then I look up at NESCAC. So NESCAC, Amherst had 15 season games counted for them. But their game against Trinity College, who's in their conference, wasn't counted.
Yeah.
However, Middlebury did have their game against Trinity counted in their pairwise evaluation. So how is that fair?
Yeah.
how is it fair that it's a mandatory conference foe? Both teams are in the same conference, and in our ranking and evaluation system, the exact same team is counted in one and not in the other.
And the other, uh,
Like, it doesn't
I
make
don't.
sense.
Doesn't make sense at all.
And
The
how a
three,
team can be ranked
yeah,
first when you're only considering 4 games,
games, yeah,
that's too small a sample size. There's no
yeah,
validity to that.
yeah,
And I agree, Messiah should have been ranked number one. I got no
yeah.
problem with that. But no ranking can be done on 4 games.
No, no,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes no. I had said so. The three things that really that struck out at me was the the I had heard, well, Coach Bianco at Denison, in my
mhm,
interview with him, had said that only 10 teams were counted for my alma mater, right? So it's only 10 teams were counted, and however that turns out, um, and among teams that wouldn't have made the tournament, the second point would have been like you, and he mentioned a few others, but you were the big one. Like, how is that even possible? But then the third thing is just, I am astounded at how little information that everyone I have talked to has said that they have received from whomever to get you guys bought in on it. And
mhm,
you're not the first one who's said that it's being forced upon, um, and that's sort of the things that I'm like, how do you do something this magnitude? I had not heard about Messiah, which is astonishing.
yeah,
And the last thing I would just say, and it goes around that, I and I'm not an expert. I'm nobody, right? Like, I just do this thing,
mhm,
and it's not a big deal. So I have no, but you know what? When I look to judge a soccer team, I don't
mhm.
exclude games because of whatever reason, right? To me, a game is valuable, right? It doesn't matter.
Right.
It's just an indicator of, should you have beat this team? Should you not have? What does it look like? How did you play? And all this stuff. So to me, you got to look at everything from the good, the bad, the ugly, the best team you played, the worst play. You got to look at it all throughout the season, the different parts of the season. To exclude 15 games,
Yeah.
10 games, 3 games, 1 game, in my mind. I'm
Yeah.
maybe call me a purist then. To
Yeah.
exclude 1 game from a ranking, a national ranking, mind
Right.
you. It's not just some sort of ranking. It is a national ranking. Is, to me, absurd, and I would say it's clearly put together by somebody who has no idea about sports, period. And I'm just talking soccer, but to me, if you applied this anywhere else, it'd be like, you're missing the point of sports. Like, you're
Well,
not.
and that's the thing, and I know, like, there is a place for statistics and equational
Mm-hmm.
systems,
Yeah, yeah,
and I'm not afraid of those. I'm
yeah,
very open to them, but this has been shrouded in darkness and
yeah,
thrown
yeah,
at us, and
yeah,
it's like this weird thing, and I've told people too, like, if you want to look at equational systems, there's these things called Massey ratings out there.
yeah, yeah.
And hey,
And I
guess
don't
what?
think you might not
Six of
agree
the
with
teams
them, but
we beat
nobody.
at the end of the season were higher
Yeah,
than us. So
yeah,
that really makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
Like, Tufts
yeah,
is still like 30 points above
yeah,
us. And I'm
yeah,
just like,
yeah,
what?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And I'm like, so every statistical equational program has its biases and
yeah.
its
Of
nearsightedness.
course, yeah,
And that's what needs to get vetted and understood to
yeah,
really do this fairly. And,
yeah,
if you're going to put out a national ranking, there needs to be some standard number of games that everybody is equally evaluated
yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah.
It
It's
can't
agreed.
be 4 for one team, 15 for another, 10 for
Yeah,
another, 7 for another.
yeah,
And then as a coach, and when you look on the receiver end, how do we schedule?
yeah.
And quite honestly, the question would be for some people, how do I schedule that only 4 of my games count?
Yes, I was thinking the same exact thing. Like, I would be avoiding like, I would be taking on games that I knew would be disqualified, right?
Yeah,
Like, so how can I
yeah,
schedule
yeah,
like,
exactly.
rather than, hey, how can I schedule the best team because I have to boost up my SOS?
Yeah,
Now it's like, how do I get games completely disqualified?
yeah.
That's right.
So, in
It's
fairness, at
nuts.
least we don't know how to answer those questions right
Yeah.
now, so there can't be people doing so.
Maybe that's the point. They're like, if we let them know, they're gonna
Yeah,
totally mess us
exactly.
up.
But
Oh,
at the same
that's
point,
amazing.
we're all ignorant right now because none of
Yeah,
us have clarity on what is considered valuable. And our season, like we make up our schedules a year ahead of time.
yeah.
So when this started coming out in like January, February, March, it's kind of like you can't install it this fall. We've already made up our schedules
Schedule.
based on the criteria that has been in place.
Yeah,
And that's the part that I know people are frustrated by is,
yeah,
hey, if you want to kick it down the line, educate us better and consider it for 2025, fine. Let's do a thorough vetting process,
yeah.
sort it out, see if this is something that's going to improve our process and situation. And then if so, great. But it seems weird that there's this rush in this process that is anything other than proper vetting. And it's just very strange. And that's what led me to text Dan about that. So I was like, I don't understand why. Like
Yeah, yeah.
what's the driving force behind this?
That was the thing that I had said. Like, this to me is like, I work in technology, like my regular job, so I'm sort of familiar with these things, how they get rolled out, and all that kind of stuff. The thing that I always was that surprised me from the get go is usually you can find out what problem a technology is trying to solve for. Whether you agree it's a
Mhm.
problem, whether you agree that the technology is going to solve that problem, it's a whole different. I can't even figure out what the problem was from the get go, right? Because I'll be honest with you, right? You can every year it's going to happen, right? When the selection committee sits down, here are 60 team, whatever the number is, 48, whatever 64, whatever those number of teams are. Everyone's going to quibble. There's going to be like, oh, that guy shouldn't have made it. They should have been replaced by
Right.
that one guy, right? Just like these
Yeah.
outliers, right? Where you're like, that should have made that's the the extent to which I've seen it go on now, it is. But I will say, in spite of all of that, in spite of those outliers, I think everybody pretty much agrees with the lists that came out over the last few years, the tournament. Like, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's no okay quibble, but yep, makes sense, makes sense. Yep. Oh, seeds. Yep, that makes sense. Okay. There's nothing broken so much, right? Like, it's
Right.
not like it's been egregious for years and people are screaming and yelling for a change. No, but I heard no, but that was of all the list of complaints, nobody was saying the selection process is totally flawed.
See, on the absurd sort of humor side of this is when the committee went retrospectively and looked at how it would have affected past years.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the history of the tournament, how is it that 2 years ago St. Joe's of Maine would have been one of the top three teams in the country and been a host, and Western Connecticut would have been as well,
Mm-hmm.
a host.
Yeah,
And just when you look at how they've done in the tournaments,
yeah,
that's not supported.
yeah, yeah,
That they're in the top five of the nation,
yeah,
like something's wrong with that. And that's one of the things. Like when we played Western Con, I mean that was a good team and everything, but I told my players, I'm like, they haven't played any
anybody,
team
yeah, yeah,
that is in this tournament.
yeah,
Like their strength of schedule, they didn't play any strong teams.
yeah.
I'm like, so we have to make sure we know what that is. We have that advantage. And in truth, that's what won us the game is our guys were just more used to playing at a certain level.
Level, yeah, yeah,
And their players were talented and they have a lot of talent on their team. But you can tell the speed of play and just the way things were going, they weren't used to it very
mm-hmm.
much. And they started infighting a lot with each
Yeah,
other and getting really
yeah.
frustrated. And ended up, I
And
think
you
their
go,
keeper
and
ended up
that's
getting a red card because he was so
yeah,
frustrated.
yeah, yeah.
And it was just, it's just that. It's
Yeah, but you
the
go
system
from
that we
that.
currently have.
Yeah,
You have
yeah.
to play good teams
Team,
to
yeah,
prove yourself and have a record
yeah,
versus rank to show that you can have some positive results against those teams.
yeah,
So it validates playing good teams and being battle tested when you come into the
yeah,
tournament. And I think that there's validity to that and a reason why that's important. And if you look at those two examples of teams that would have been in the top 5 in the nation, like that's not representative of truth.
Mm. No,
It's just
no,
simply
no, no,
not.
no.
Now, if
Yeah.
those two teams had been getting to Final Fours and making good runs,
That's a
sure, I'd
different
be
story.
open. I'd be open
Yeah,
minded
yeah,
to it and say,
yeah,
okay, maybe there is more
yeah,
validity to something else than what we're doing.
yeah,
But that hasn't been the case.
yeah, yeah. I would just say I had said all along that I thought that 2 years ago when Western Con was undefeated that they should have gotten into the tournament. Not necessarily because they were so great, but I think anybody who goes undefeated in the tournament deserves a spot. And they weren't given a spot, which
Mhm.
again, that's one of those. It was the one of the season where it was like those guys should have been in, right? And like I said,
Right,
those to me are the outliers, right? Which are
right.
you're always going to have, but this way is this way is just a little nutty, and
Yeah.
I just don't. It's not thought out. It's not thought out. So is the exact reason for why it's being rolled out the way it is. Like just do it. Like just roll it out. Just go forth. Hey, let me ask you one or could lead to more question, and then I'll let you go. I mean, have you had a chance to look at the landmark now, uh, and
A
get a
little bit,
sense?
a
Yeah.
little bit. I'm sort of, learning more. We have a conference symposium in May, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be much more familiar with landmark
Yeah.
things after
Yeah.
that symposium. I'm expecting.
Yeah. Have you been watching film, or are you just watching film of your own of Goucher? Or?
Yeah, just watching film, and one of the things is teams change so much from year to year between injuries and new people
Mm-hmm.
coming in.
Mm.
So it's tough to go back and look at past games because you could have such change in a team and what they're doing and who their
Yeah.
personnel are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just trying to get as familiar as I can right now with our team and making sure we control what we can
Mm-hmm.
control.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I will tell you that I will be following, and actually, you might see me on May 3rd if you're there, because I'll be passing through. I got some meetings on Friday the 3rd, so I may stop by because I don't have a Goucher hat. So one thing I didn't get when I stopped by there last time, so it's on my list. So I'll have to knock on your door to say hello.
I
But
think May 3rd is our last spring practice day.
oh, nice.
And then after that, I drive back to Lexington because on the 4th, I coach the alumni at the WNL game.
Come on, you're coffee. Like,
I'm a tea drinker and I'll have plenty
oh
of
Lord. Okay, it's got caffeine, but still, yeah.
it.
All right. Well, Coach, I wish you the best of luck. I'm more than confident. I think anyone who doesn't start paying attention to Goucher women's soccer is definitely going to be missing out because this is going to be great to see. I think over a few years the evolution of of the program and just show how good you actually are as a coach. So I'm sure Washington and
Thank you.
Lee is saddened, disappointed, but Goucher has really definitely picked up a winner. So
Thank you
thank you
so much.
for
I
all
appreciate
your
it.
thank you for all your support. Thanks for hopping on, and look forward to catching up next time.
Sounds great.
All right.
Sounds great. Have a great one. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks. Thanks.